Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Consumer Affairs Homeowners Association's presentation. Really, we're going to hone in on that 2024 Homeowners Association report that we just issued at the end of January. I am Carrie Gruby-Leibarker, the Administrator and Consumer Advocate for the department, and it's always my pleasure to be able to present and engage with y'all, especially on the areas of homeowners associations, which is really our top area. Most popular consumer education that we give every year. And just a reminder, the presentation is not meant to serve as a substitute for reading the various laws that we may discuss or asking for opinions or seeking legal counsel. We're just trying to give an introduction and overview of homeowners associations and the data that we collected during calendar year 2023. All right, let's talk about the role that the department plays with the, I think it's still new, 5.5-year-old Homeowner Association Act. So we're going to launch our first poll question. So, do you live in a neighborhood that has a homeowner association? Collecting responses. Give you all a couple more seconds to vote. Right now, it's looking like we have a lot more yeses than nos. About 70% of our attendees have voted so far. Going to leave it open a couple more seconds. All right, we had about 80% of folks voted. And 78% said yes, that you do live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, and 22% said no. All right. So this will be some vital information for those of you who do live in homeowners associations, and then some interesting information if you don't live in a homeowners association. All right, so under the Homeowner Association Act, which became law in May of 2018, it puts forth certain items that the department can do, and then there's certain items that we cannot do. This particular bill was kind of a comprehensive bill that touched on different areas because there had been many different versions that had been introduced in like the 2 decades prior to this. Some of those bills are still out on the web, so hopefully we'll be able to allay some confusion and talk about what actually passed. So as far as the Department of Consumer Affairs, what the statute requires us to do is take homeowner association complaints. We're also supposed to collect and compile the homeowner association complaint data and share that data with the governor and the General Assembly on an annual basis. It's by January 31st every year for data collected in the prior calendar year. And then we also have the requirement of providing education to homeowners and to homeowners associations. What we are not allowed to do under the law is administer the Homeowners Association Act. The Act talks about magistrates court having certain jurisdiction. It talks about the South Carolina Nonprofit Corporations Act applying to homeowners associations, whether you're registered as a nonprofit or not. We do not have the authority to administer and or enforce that act. So how does a homeowner association know what they can and cannot do? So first of all, you look at applicable state laws, and we're only going to touch kind of at the 30,000 foot level view on this, but we are going to have a webinar during National Consumer Protection Week next month, and I'll give more details on that. That'll dive a little bit deeper into the applicable state laws. If you have any questions about the laws, you can certainly email them to us ahead of that webinar at scdca@scconsumer.gov. Again, that's SCDCA for South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs at scconsumer.gov. So there are 3 statutes that may apply to a homeowners association. The South Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act, if the homeowner association chose to organize under that statute. The South Carolina Horizontal Property Regime Act, if you have a condominium. And then the South Carolina Homeowners Association Act that applies to all. And then the Homeowner Association governing documents tell the Homeowner Association what they can and cannot do. So you have your declaration, your master deeds, and your bylaws that cover the rights and responsibilities of the members of homeowners associations, but mainly set out how the association is going to operate. And then you have the rules and regulations, the CCRs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that limit how a homeowner can improve or use their property. So it can cover landscaping, it can cover guests, it can cover pets, it's endless in the array of areas that are included in the CC&Rs. So that's kind of an overview of our authority under the Homeowner Association Act and what laws would apply and how else the Homeowner Association knows what they can and cannot do. Here are some tips when dealing with homeowner association issues. If you're unhappy with an action of your association, we certainly encourage you to first try talking with the HOA board of directors and be prepared for that, right? So you want to look at your rules and regulations as it aligns with whatever your issue or concern may be, and then check your governing documents to see if there is a formal internal dispute process within your homeowners association that you need to follow, and make sure you have copies of any supporting documentation or anything that you may need to be able to aptly make the homeowner association board of directors aware of what your concerns or your issues are. If you're not happy with the outcome, you can certainly elect members that you think will be more responsive to your needs. It includes running for election yourself, utilizing the democratic process to try and address your concerns. Now, if the issue involves a monetary dispute, as I mentioned previously, magistrate's court may be able to assist you. That dispute just has to be $7,500. The amount in controversy has to be $7,500 or less. And then this is a hyperlink, or you can cut and paste that into your browser for information on how the magistrate's court process works. And then, of course, you can always file a complaint with our office. It would go through our voluntary mediation process, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a moment. You can also seek legal advice from an attorney. The South Carolina Bar has a lawyer referral service, and you can go to that telephone number or to that website to find information on how they may be able to align you with somebody. And there's the info about filing a complaint with SCDCA. I jumped the gun a little bit. So let's talk about how you can do that. So you can file a complaint online at consumer.sc.gov. And why would you do so? Why would you choose to file a complaint? Because sometimes we are actually able to assist folks. Your issue may get resolved. That could be in the form of a refund, credit, or adjustment. It could be that whatever documents you were seeking, you finally were able to get those. It could be repairs and maintenance done. The homeowner association may adjust a bylaw or a covenant. But this information does go into our database that then becomes the report annually that we submit to the legislature and the governor. So whatever your issues were, that information can help them make policy decisions. But we also encourage you to contact your legislators directly, and keep in mind that we cannot force a homeowners association or a homeowner to participate in the complaint process or require a specific outcome or attempt to arbitrate the dispute. So again, we have limited authority in collecting and processing those complaints. How do you find out who your legislator is? You can go to scstatehouse.gov, and then at the bottom it says find your legislators, and you click in there, put in your address, and they can let you know who your representatives and your senators are. If you do decide to file a complaint with our office online, you would click on our consumer complaints page, which can be found under the Consumer Resources tab, file a HOA complaint. They'll tell you how you can download a PDF of our regular complaint form and our supplemental questionnaire, or you can complete that process online. But the law does require, in order for us to accept the complaint, you must submit the HOA supplemental questionnaire. It has specific data that the law sets out that we have to collect during the complaint process. So if we don't get that, after we notify you a couple of times, then we will close out the complaint as being abandoned. So there's 2 steps in order to file that complaint. And the Homeowner Association questionnaire just became digitized not too long ago online, so it's been helpful for us. So you would just file that complaint and then file this separately. And you are able to upload supporting documentation in our complaint database system when you file that initial complaint. So that's helpful. We just want to make sure that you give us all the information that you have that sheds light on the issue. It makes it very clear to the Homeowner Association what the concern is so that they can respond accordingly. So again, we are not permitted to arbitrate a complaint. It is a voluntary mediation complaint process. So what does that look like? So we facilitate communication between the consumer and the business. We want to make sure we have all the information to understand the complaint so the business will understand that complaint. And then we send that to the business for their reply. When we get the reply back, we look at the complaint and the response and make sure that the response is addressing the issues that are raised in the complaint. The consumer does have the availability to give additional information during that process as well. So when the complaint comes in, it's processed and assigned to a complaint analyst. The complaint's mailed to the business response is hopefully received and reviewed, and then the complaint is assigned a closing status, and the consumer is mailed that business response. So here we have another poll question that we're going to launch about the complaint process. So, have you filed a homeowner association complaint with our office? Have you filed a homeowner association complaint with our office? I'm going to give folks a couple more seconds to put in their responses. Got about 60% who have voted so far. All right, we seem to have leveled out about 64% of folks. So we will share the responses. So about 14% of our attendees today have filed a homeowner association response with or complaint with us, and 86% have not. So great. So hopefully we educate y'all on that process. And if you did file a complaint, no matter when it was filed, it's going to be discussed today because we had 2 reports that we have issued over the last year, one containing information on the 5 years, the 5 reports that we had issued from the law becoming effective May 2018 until last year's report. It was 5 total. That first report was only half a year of data. So it's 4.5 years of data. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to dive into the 2024 HOA report data. So the department received 517 complaints against homeowner associations during calendar year 2023. This is quite the increase, whereas in 2023, we had received 331 complaints. Just because a complaint is filed, it does not mean it's included in our report. So as I mentioned, if you do not complete the HOA supplemental questionnaire, it will not be included. If it's a duplicate or we had to refer it to another agency, it will not be included. So 517 complaints is a lot, especially when you look at how many complaints we received from June of 2018 after the law went into effect to December of 2021. And you can see that 2018 is the darker blue, the 92. And then in 2019, it was 212, in 2020, 240, in 2021, 209. As I mentioned, in 2022, it was 331. So we just every year have seen that go up. So the report for 2024 contains information on 365 complaints because we had certain ones that did not meet the statutory requirements. 46 complaints were excluded because 35 did not meet the statutory requirements for inclusion, 10 were duplicates. We did have some that were referred. The numbers overall, it's like a 37% increase that we were seeing in complaints. If you look at 2020, sorry. Where's the, there we go. So the number of complaints, it was an increase of 32% year over year, but a 37% increase over 2020, the complaints raised 742 concerns, with multiple concerns being included in a single complaint, and the number of concerns was a 14% increase year over year. The top complaints by county: Horry County had the largest amount of complaints that were filed with our department with 89. Richland came in second with 56. Charleston came in third with 40. Greenville had 33, Lexington 21, and so on and so forth. And so percentage-wise, it was spread out pretty well amongst the different counties, where even the 89, that only constitutes about 25% of the overall complaints that were filed. And here's a graph, a map, so you can see where your county falls. And it went in line with per capita as well. We looked at just straight numbers of complaints that were filed, and then looked at how many complaints were filed per 1,000 residents of that particular county. And they both aligned pretty well. But it was interesting to look at the cities, the top cities where we received HOA complaints from. And Columbia was number 1. 9% of complaints came from Columbia, 50 total. Myrtle Beach was 41. Complaints came from the city of Myrtle Beach, about 11%. And then Murrells Inlet was 19 complaints came from there. And then the Charleston area, Mount Pleasant and Somerville, came up with the next 2 spots. Both had around 4%. And then Simpsonville, Charleston, North Charleston, Conway, and Blythewood kind of rounded out the top 10 cities where the complaints originated from. So what kind of issues were being raised in these complaints? The top 3 types, we have first, failure to adhere to or enforce covenants and bylaws. And this was about 15% of complaints. It was the same, number 1, as last year, and I think even the year before that, it seems to stay in that number 1 spot. And this could include the way that a board is transferring or not transferring from the developer to the Homeowners Association, to their residents. Board elections are infrequent or off cycle, or there are violations that are not in covenants and bylaws, but people are being assessed for them or being ticketed or whatnot for them. The second area, concerns regarding maintenance or repairs. This was almost 13% of complaints that we received, pretty self-explanatory, and that was the number 2 spot last year as well. The number 3 at almost 9% was that the consumer disagrees with a HOA fee or a special assessment. And this is new to our top 3. Last year it was request to access information or view documents, and that was actually number 4 this year. Part of the HOA supplemental questionnaire is to request from those who are filing a complaint recommendations for changing the provisions of the governing documents to align with the issue that they're having. And so these are kind of the categories that we saw. The other category is always larger because it encompasses a bunch of different areas that people bring up. But the number 1 substantive area or recommendation was having open meeting or notice requirements. Number 2 is forbidding a homeowners association from placing liens or foreclosing on property within the association. Number 4 was setting parameters for viewing or copying records. Number 5 was setting or changing the developer transition of control. And then a couple folks, 20 of them, did not provide any recommendations in that area. Recommendations for enforcing governing documents. We had 185 folks say that state agency oversight would be beneficial in that area. 129 saying the creation of a homeowners association ombudsman would be helpful for enforcing governing documents. And then 107, enforcement of provisions through magistrate's court. And then 64 folks had other recommendations for enforcement. So how were we able to resolve or process these complaints? So we'll go over some of the numbers. So 5% of the complaints were closed unsatisfied due to the Homeowners Association's failure to respond to the complaint. This really is a sharp decline from what we had seen prior to May 2018, prior to the law going into effect, where we had a little over 13% of homeowners associations fail to respond. And it was around 6 or closer to 6% last year, so it is a slight decline. 21% were closed as undetermined. We are continuing to see this number rise. Undetermined complaints are those that usually have disputed facts, that our analysts, when they're reviewing, they can't tell which side particularly would be in the right in that particular area or for that particular complaint. And that's, again, because we don't have jurisdiction, we don't have the ability to determine that. So if something is more complex, whether it's in fact or with issues that had arisen, then we will close it as undetermined. A lot of times this is with misappropriation or financial issues. If somebody's seeking to dissolve a homeowners association or seeking fair elections, that oftentimes will get an undetermined closing designation. All right, so 16% were abandoned, and that was due to the consumer's failure to submit the HOA supplemental questionnaire. That's up from 10% last year. There were 1% that were abandoned after the complaint was sent out. So that's just folks who didn't want to continue on with the complaint process. And then 67% of complaints were closed adequate business response. Sometimes the consumer could have been happy with the outcome as well, but essentially the Homeowners Association fully addressed the issues and responded to the office, pointed to the governing documents, the covenants, the restrictions, whatever it was that permitted them to engage in the action that was being complained of. And I think we did have, 3% were closed as consumer satisfied because the documents requested were received, repairs were made. I think there was over $3,000 in fees that were refunded back to consumers through the complaint process too. All right, before we get to resources, I'm going to check to see if we have any questions. We've covered a lot of information so far. Okay, so somebody asked how many people are on the webinar. Currently, we have about 46, and so I guess you were looking for the poll questions. So yes, we had about 46 folks who are attending the webinar today. So somebody says they live in a POA, and they said it's unclear as to whether or not the Act regulates POAs as well. And so what I would do is point you to the law itself. It has a definition of what a homeowners association is. And so by reading that, you should be able to determine whether or not the homeowner association or your POA falls under the definition of a homeowners association. And I would encourage you as well to listen to our webinar that's going to go a little bit more in depth into that law in March. So who is authorized to enforce the homeowner association law? Without enforcement, is it a law? Yes, there's lots of laws that are on the books that don't have a particular state agency or anybody assigned to be able to administer or enforce them. Because it does not have a specific agency, for us, we would be able to interpret the provisions regarding the complaint process and the reporting, because that does fall under our jurisdiction. But the other portions of it do not. So the Attorney General's office would be able to assist with interpretation. Otherwise, as I mentioned previously, the Magistrate's Court could handle monetary disputes of $7,500 or less, or it would be the court system. That's who would enforce the law. And again, there are many laws like that on the books. Okay, so somebody said, it's my understanding if someone submits multiple complaints against a homeowners association at one time, the complaints are combined into one complaint. Is that correct? If yes, then the number of actual complaints is being underreported and benefiting the HOA, not the consumer. Please comment. So that's correct. If you have a point in time and you are complaining about particular issues that you have with a homeowners association, that is one complaint. One complaint, but may have multiple concerns. And so as I mentioned previously with the data, that's a data point that we give out. So I think, let me rewind a little bit to see what it was for this year. It was 517 complaints total, but then we had 365 complaints that were filed with 742 concerns. So it's not as though those concerns aren't documented or tracked. We still track the amount of concerns, but for efficiency, it's put into one complaint. What are our rights regarding fee increases when the developer is involved? It would go back to your bylaws, to your master deed, to those documents. And that's what will lay out what authority the homeowner association has to increase fees. And a lot of times, if a if a development is not fully developed, the developer is the main person for that homeowner association, but they still have to abide by those governing documents. Then somebody asked, can a company in North Carolina manage, I guess, a property or homeowner association in South Carolina? I'm not aware of any law that would prohibit that. I don't believe that there is any licensing or registration requirement for property management companies of homeowners associations. I don't believe that there's anything to that effect at this point in time. Does the builder receive a portion of the homeowner association fees collected? That I don't know. Again, I'm not aware of any prohibition for that, but your governing documents would be where to go to. So the developer went bankrupt before phase 1 of 6 phases was completed. The bankruptcy was in 1986. Wow. Is the master deed still a governing document as far as percentage of interest? If it's never been updated, your association needs to get together to make sure that they update that, because that's all that's on the books at this point in time. You may want to seek the assistance of an attorney to see if, because the company filed bankruptcy, if that interest would just automatically come over to the residents of the homeowners association. But again, an attorney who's well versed in the area of homeowners associations may better be able to assist you there. So somebody says they need to pay their homeowners association dues, but they don't know where they're supposed to send it. How should they handle that? So all of the governing documents are supposed to be filed with your Register of Deeds. That was one of the requirements back in May of 2018. So if you don't have a copy of your governing documents, then I would go there to the Register of Deeds office to get a copy of your homeowner association governing documents. I don't know if you have a website for the homeowners association, or if you can ask your neighbors if they're having to pay dues as well, that those can be some places to start. A question, when does the homeowner association take full responsibility from the neighborhood developer? Usually that's in your governing documents. There's nothing in the law that lays out what percentage of the homes need to be occupied or anything in that nature. So again, the governing documents is the place to look for that answer. That's again, going back to what a homeowner association can and cannot do. You look at the applicable laws and what may apply with those, and then you look at those governing documents. Great questions. All right, I'm going to go over resources, but if you still have a question, I'll be happy to come back to those after this section. So, Homeowner Association education page. To access the information that was put as handouts for this particular webinar today, you can go to our website, consumer.sc.gov. Click on Consumer Resources, and then HOA Education. And that'll send you to our HOA page. It also has links directly to the South Carolina Homeowners Association Act and the other statutes. We have summaries on those. You can also get to the Homeowner Association report from there. Provides background. It also has the 5-year report, the special report, with a compilation of data, and it's more robust than the general report. The general report we're required to issue is filterable and searchable. It's a big Excel spreadsheet, so you can look for your particular homeowner association or homeowners association, particular county or city, or by issue or concern that was filed. And we took all the information over the last 5 reports and put it into one 5-year special report, including information from the supplemental questionnaire that included how consumers think that, governing documents need to be enforced, or other recommendations for how to address their issues. We also have contacts that will be helpful for you, and that includes the county clerk of courts and register of deeds as well if you're looking for your governing documents. And these are just the ditties that we have on the particular statutes that may apply to your homeowner association, and it goes over some of the highlights of those. You can also view our Homeowners Association playlist on YouTube. So if you go to SCDCA on YouTube, there's a link on our website to get you there. And you can click on homeowners associations. You can click on those 7 videos. The videos we have up currently, we have last year's presentation on the Homeowners Association laws. And then we have our 5-year complaint report webinar that we did back in June. Last year's complaint report, that'll probably be coming up off and being replaced with this one, but just a litany of different topics in the area of homeowners associations available for you. All right, so with that, I'm going to look to see if we have any additional questions. Okay, who bears the responsibility to ensure that consumers receive the updated HOA covenants? The updated copy was not filed at the county deeds office. So again, there's no one who enforces or administers that particular section of the law. That would be something that the court system would have to handle at this point in time. Is there any way your department can help concerned South Carolina homeowners associations connect to each other? So we don't have, there's no registration or filing requirement at the state level to let us know who's a homeowners association and who's not. We have no idea how many homeowners associations are out there. The only contact information we have is what's received via complaints. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not aware if there's a trade association for homeowners associations or anything like that. And somebody said to get in contact with the homeowners association, you can also check the Secretary of State's website by the name of your homeowner association. That'll give you a registered agent. So if you're having difficulty contacting somebody, that's a way to do that as well. Thank you to Mandy Self, our director of our Consumer Services Division, for making me aware of that. On our website, we have a link to the Secretary of State's website on the HOA Ed page. Somebody asked a question, is percentage of interest based on square footage or value? And I don't know about percentage of interest if they're talking about the builder percentage of interest. Usually, if you're talking about the builder transition, there's a percentage of occupancy within the home, or there's a percentage of the development that's being developed that is the trigger for the transfer of the control of the homeowners association. Do homeowners association have an expiration date? No, not that I'm aware of. To seek an attorney for the community association, how is the attorney paid for? By the association. So oftentimes it's a special assessment or it's a part of your dues. It depends on how it's set up. What takes precedence? HOA regulations, state law, city ordinances, county regulations, etc. It depends. It depends on what the law says. And usually if it is not referenced in the law, a state law would supersede any city ordinances or county regulations. When it gets to city and county ordinances, usually they're not allowed to operate in the same space, so that would get more complicated. Is there any plan to offer more homeowner protections against HOA enforcement? An example, a homeowner association should not be allowed to foreclose on someone's home. So our office currently is going through the House Legislative Oversight Committee process, and we were asked to make recommendations regarding homeowners associations. Whether or not those recommendations or potential proposals to beef up the area of homeowners association regulation, which really the recommendations we made, number one, was an internal dispute resolution process, because that's often what we see is our complaint process is one for communication. That people, if they would communicate and be able to point to the governing documents and why something is occurring, that alleviates a lot of concern. But we don't know what will be brought up and what won't be brought up. That's why we encourage you to contact your legislators. I do believe there is a bill pending currently about whether or not a homeowner association can foreclose on property, but those are some things that we'll talk about on the laws presentation in March. We'll talk about some outstanding bills in the areas of homeowners associations. Where would we find laws pertaining to service animals and how they are enforced by the HOA? That I do not know. Service animals, I'm trying to remember the statute. So I'm guessing this is in relation to like community property and things of that nature. whenever the service animal is coming into the community property, or whether or not they can be permitted to come into the community property. It's just not an area that we're well versed in. Trying to think if it's a discrimination act, if any of our attorneys from DCA are aware. What I would do is I would ask you, consumer, if you don't mind emailing your question to SCDCA at scconsumer.gov, and we can at least look to see what statute would apply to service animals generally. I know it applies at the business level and like the employment-employer relationship level. I just can't think of the law itself, and I don't know how it would be applied to a homeowner association community property kind of situation. A question, can a builder keep increasing the number of lots? What are homeowners' rights in this regard? Yeah, I think that the builder, if they purchased the land to be able to build, it would be the request would be made to whoever oversees the property development and land development in that particular area. Unless the governing documents say otherwise, then they can do it. You would just need to look at your governing documents to see if it's even mentioned. But otherwise, I think just general contract law, if they own the property and are filing the plans to add on, I don't know how that would be able to be stopped. Okay, so the question, it's service animals being allowed into a dwelling within the homeowner's association, is being able to even own a service animal. That I'm not sure. The South Carolina Department of Human Affairs may be able to answer that question at a housing level. Thank you again, Mandy Self. Regarding those service animals, that could be a way to start looking. But again, email us and we'll see if we can find any additional resources for you. All right. Not seeing any additional questions. Again, would encourage you to join us again on March 7th to go over the homeowner associations and the applicable laws there and the pending bills. I appreciate everybody's participation today. It's always great when we know you're listening on the other side. Hopefully we're able to answer those questions. But again, broadly, our office doesn't administer and enforce a lot of the laws that are out there relating to homeowner associations, but we can educate folks on what those are. And always look into your governing documents. No matter what question you have, it's likely not going to be addressed in state law, and the governing documents is going to be where to go. Somebody asked what an ombudsman is, and it's usually somebody who is just designated to be the intake and the mediator for a particular subject matter, and this one would be for homeowners associations. And then somebody mentioned when you're looking at service animals, just know there's a distinction between service animals and therapy dogs, and what appropriate regulation or different regulation would be there too. So great. Thanks so much for y'all's comment. Hope you have a great rest of your day and hope we'll see you on an upcoming webinar. Take care.